As I said, I'm Sharon Terry, PXE International, and delighted to work with you through all these years since 1994 when my own children were diagnosed. And we won't go through all these things that PXE International has done, but essentially to say that we have, in fact, paid a lot of attention, we hope, to the needs, to your needs, and in fact, surveyed you on those several times. And clearly things like finding a treatment, being able to be diagnosed and so forth are very important. And we've moved in that direction overall many times over the last 28 years or so. So what is PXE? It's a genetic systemic disorder associated with mineralization, primarily of the elastic tissue of the skin, eyes, and arteries. And you're going to hear a lot about that today. It's a metabolic disorder due to mutations in the gene that's called ABCC6 that's important for transporting a substance out of the cell. The prevalence of PXE, so how much does it occur? It's about 1 in 25,000 people to 1 in 50,000. We actually have no idea about how prevalent it is. And then in certain places, there's something called a founder effect, where there are more individuals with the condition because they probably were geographically or politically isolated. And so they had a smaller pool of individuals to choose from in terms of finding mates. It affects all ethnic and racial groups. You heard Lily say in the video that they're working with zebrafish and mice and rats. So the ABCC6 gene is found in organisms across all sorts of species. And it affects women disproportionately, approximately 3 to 2, and we don't know why. That still remains a mystery. PXE is an autosomal recessive disease. There was a point many years ago, decades ago, where it was thought to be both dominant and recessive, which would have been rather strange. But in fact, it is truly a recessive disease, meaning that if you have PXE, your dad carried PXE mutations on one of his what's called alleles, genes, and so did your mom. And the chance with each pregnancy is 25% to have an individual who's affected. Several other individuals will be carriers. That'd be 50% of those, and 25% that the child would not be a carrier and would not be affected. It doesn't mean that 25% of the born children have PXE, because in fact, in my case, it's 100%. It just means each time you have a pregnancy in conception, you're rolling the dice, and 25% of the time a person will be affected. There are some families that have PXE in more than one generation, and that's because this affected individual here has now had a child with a carrier. And so that does happen. It's very rare, but it does happen. So PXE is a late onset disorder. There's a lot of variation in symptoms in and between families, as you know, as you've spoken to each other. A lot of people had an opportunity last night to be in breakout rooms with each other and learn about each other's symptoms and so forth. They're different, and they're even different within a family. The reasons for these differences are not known. We can guess that they're the same as many other conditions, and that is that the genetics, the background genes are different in different people, as well as how people, their lifestyle, what they eat, how they exercise, and so forth. And so far, we have no association between a mutation and particular symptoms. We've done extensive studies and can't find one. Some other papers have said there is one. It's a kind of simple association, but we don't quite understand that yet. We found the gene in 2000, as Yoni mentioned in the video that we just showed you, and was this known gene ABCC6, which is an ATP binding cassette. That's the ABC in a family of genes, and it helps ATP release from liver cells. Without it, something called pyrophosphate is low, which was an amazing discovery that you'll hear about throughout the weekend as well, because this starts to give us a way to target various parts of this pathway so that we can have treatments. This is a little drawing of ATP being pumped out of the cell. This is disrupted in people with PXE, and you have low pyrophosphate levels. In diagnosing the PXE, we're looking for an examination of the skin, biopsy of the lesional skin, the bumps, examination of the eye for pot orange and/or angioid streaks, family history of PXE, genetic testing, and then excluding other conditions that have angioid streaks. And we have our dermatologists, ophthalmologists, vascular specialists, and so on, who will speak about all these things today. And I'm just going to throw in a couple of other statements that they won't be making, or they'll be making in a less focused form, because I've asked them to really focus on the organ system. Basically, to just summarize that we do know the gene. It's a remarkable thing from the early years, because we would sit here and say, I don't know the gene. I don't know if it's metabolic. We don't know what is the substance that's low in the levels of people with PXE. And we know all those things now, and there are several treatments in development. You are why we know what we know. And I can't make this too pointed a statement, in the sense that we need you to tell us what it is like to live with PXE. And because it's so highly variable, we don't just need 5 people or 10 people, we need a lot of people. And we also need all of you to tell us what it's like to live with PXE, so that we can find what's called a biomarker or a measure, so that when these wonderful clinical trials are coming to the regulatory agencies like FDA, we can actually tell FDA what those biomarkers, what those measures are. And so you've all been invited to the PXE surveys. There's many of them now. You see a few of them here on the screen. Once you register, you're in a secure and private platform, and you can give us information about yourself. That helps us a lot and helps the researchers more than we can say. It is fabulous that people are in the several clinical trials. This is the most important clinical trial, is to really in this way, to give us your take on what it is to live with PXE. And so Kat will put in the chat the URLs so that you can click on that at your leisure. We'll also offer a breakout room today to help you with these surveys if you weren't able to do them. And understanding our research needs has been a very important activity of PXE International. We have 14,000 people registered with us. That includes affected individuals, carriers, and other family members. We have about 4,855 affected individuals. 70% of those are male, and 30% are 70% are female, and 30% are male, and 300 of them are new in the past year. More than 5,000 specimens in our biobank, and 400 of you have connected your EHR. That's only available in the US, because the other countries aren't yet using the same standard, but you can upload your electronic and paper records from other countries as well. I'm not going to go through this slide. Suffice it to say that lots of the work that we've done, a lot of our understanding came from the registry, and we have a lot more to come as well. We have a consortium now working on a natural history study. Yoni and I were leading that, so we'll figure out how to reconfigure as we move forward. But this idea is to understand, how does PXE progress? What happens during that progression? How might we interrupt that progression? And what could we measure to notice whether or not a treatment is working? I want to thank the staff again, Kat, Mary, Georgia, Ian, Ruth, Anna, Suzanne, who was our first employee from South Africa, Tamara, and myself, and know that we are here to serve you. I'm going to stop my sharing and turn it over to Kat for a second part of this talk, which essentially is to show you what we've learned from the information that you've shared with us. Feel free at any time to put questions in the chat, and we'll get to them. We are really interested in knowing what it is you need to know. Kat?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm actually going to turn off my video just because I don't have a stable internet connection, and I want to make sure everyone can hear me well. There we go. So like Sharon said, I'm Kat Troutman. I am the research manager for PXE International, and over the past year and a half, I've been diving deeper into the basic gold mine of 28 years of data PXE International has collected, and here are some of my results. So I combined 3 data collection periods, 1995 to 98, 2005 to 2008, and 2009 to 2015 into one large data set. We do have a 4th large data collection period from 2015 to now, but that data has not been studied to completion, so it's not included within the upcoming results. So I removed duplicate responses and used the first survey submission that an individual completed, and this left me with an overall number of participants of 1,614. This is an astounding number and honestly remarkable participation rate, but we need a higher number for even more concrete results. So here's the demographic breakdown for those individuals. 25% were male, 75% female, and roughly 90% reported white, non-Hispanic ethnicity. The youngest participant was 4 and the oldest 90. This was possible since guardians were able to submit for their wards. The average age was 45.9, and you can see the overall age distribution in the frequency graph right here. Each little dot represents an individual who took the surveys, so you can see the majority of the individuals were between age 40 and 60, and this red line here shows the average age of 45.9. So what did the surveys investigate? The surveys asked questions related to 3 categories: symptom onset, symptom severity, and novel symptoms. Symptom onset questions were those like, how old were you when skin symptoms first started to appear? How old were you when your eye symptoms appeared, etc. Symptom severity asked about skin symptoms, and everyone described their symptoms based on the FATEDEX scoring between 0 or 3. So questions in this category were, what are your skin symptoms like on your neck, back, underarms, etc. The last category for novel symptoms was our way to determine if PXEers experience any other possible symptoms that may not be considered a part of PXE. And the main question that I'm going to focus on from that is, have you ever experienced gastrointestinal bleeding? So I found that the average age for first symptom onset was 20 years old, while the average age for diagnosis was 28. So these are shown by the red lines in the frequency graph here, and it hints at the diagnostic odyssey individuals with any rare disease face. I also looked into specific PXE symptoms and found that skin symptoms first appear on the neck around 17 years of age, followed by symptoms appearing in the underarm, elbow, knee, and groin. And I also saw that on average, eye symptoms did not appear until 30 years of age, starting with peau d'orange and progressing to angioid streaks. Currently, I'm taking this data and further separating it by age and gender to look for any patterns. So I wanted to show you a deeper dive into one particular symptom, legal blindness. I found that 22.7% of responders were legally blind, with the average age being 61 years old. 74% of the individuals reporting legal blindness were female, 36% male. But what I really wanted to highlight with this is that in 2011, there was another study done on a different group of PXEers that showed 35% of individuals were legally blind. This change, we believe, is due to the growing availability of anti-angiogenesis eye injections, which became available for use in PXE around 2008. So the fact that the percentage of legally blind individuals is reducing is a great indicator that the eye injections are working. So this is just a quick snapshot of possible vascular system manifestations of PXE, particularly highlighting the proportion of PXEers with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and intermittent claudication. We have to dig deeper into high blood pressure and high cholesterol to determine if they are truly symptoms of PXE or if they're just a comorbidity. So here's another symptom-specific deep dive, this time with intermittent claudication. 26.4 reported intermittent claudication symptoms, with the average age of those starting at 38.7 years old. 48 of the respondents were female, 52% male. The youngest age for symptom onset in females was only 4 years old, and for males it was 7, showing that symptoms have a potential to start appearing young. So one interesting thing I found was that the proportion of PXEers who experienced gastrointestinal bleeding was significantly higher than the US population average. My research showed that 20% of PXEers stated they have experienced gastrointestinal bleeding, while the US population average is only between 0.036% and 0.067%. So this could mean that gastrointestinal bleeding is a symptom of PXE, but once again, we have to dig deeper into this. There we go. So how can you help? Our next steps are to dig deeper into the data and get as much as we can published and verified, but we need every single one of you to complete our surveys. In this new year, we will launch a whole new survey campaign. Everything is completely online, so you're able to take them at your leisure. And all of us, like Sharon said at PXE, are here to help you along the way. And we even have the capability to do the surveys over the phone with you if you're not too tech savvy with it. But the more people that take the surveys, the better understanding we receive, and more pieces of the puzzle fall into place, and the more answers we have for your questions. So the information that we have attained so far would not be possible without everyone who has completed the surveys and shared clinical records, but we still need you and many others to keep contributing. And I want to thank all of our many collaborators for assisting us along the way. So thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks very much, Kat. So there's a lot in what Kat just said, and there's a lot that needs to be fully discovered. Some of the things that jump out at me, and thanks for the clapping, Helen. So some of the things that jump out at me are things like the onset of pot orange and angioid streaks being so late in our survey. It's not that they occur so late, it's that we haven't surveyed enough young people. One of the things about the survey and even about meetings like this is that the people who have the most severe symptoms, the most attention to those symptoms are here. They're taking the surveys. There are a lot of people with very mild PXE who don't take the surveys, who don't come to PXE International and so on. And so we get a somewhat skewed view of the disease. However, it's still very important to get that view because it is affecting you. And then I'll just answer a couple questions and we're going to move on in the interest of time. The definition of legally blind, it's probably not very savvy of us to use just that definition. That's a US definition, and it's that the central visual acuity is less than 20/200 with correction. So it's a very legal definition. That's why we call it legally blind. And it's the one that the IRS uses, for example, to put you in a different category for disability. And then if you've taken the survey but have a new symptom, such as a gastro bleed, how can we best inform you? We are about to launch a very comprehensive every organ survey, and you'll be able to tell us there. And that should be in the next month or so. Thanks to Kat and the work that she's done. Thanks, Kat.